In this study of serial killers, we will start by going over John Wayne Gacy, also known as the Killer Clown. We will begin by going over his childhood. As the second child and only son out of a total of 3 children, John spent most of his childhood trying to make his father proud, but rarely received what he was after. This friction lasted throughout his entire adolescence, suffering frequent physical and verbal abuse from his father for never being good enough in his eyes. However, Gacy always claimed that he never had hatred for his father, despite the treatment. He also never struck back or fought against his father during any physical altercations. However, some behavior that may play a factor in what Gacy would later become would be the fact that he was accused of sexually harassing a classmate and gained extremely harsh punishment from his father in the form of a beating. Gacy also suffered from being sexually molested himself by a family friend and was too afraid to bring it up because he would believe it would cause punishment on his behalf. Due to many medical conditions, Gacy would also be forced to avoid sports and take frequent hospital visits, which led to him having very little social life and becoming the recipient to bullying and more harassment from his father. When it came to schooling, Gacy suffered through slips in his grade due to his medical issues, but he was able to graduate and took an interest in politics. He started off as an assistant precinct captain for a Democratic Party in his town, but later on would become a full candidate for the party. Nothing much came out of this, though, as eventually Gacy left home and worked for an ambulance service in Las Vegas. He also worked with a mortuary business and frequently witnessed many embalming rituals. On one occasion, when he was alone, he climbed into a coffin of a deceased teenage boy and embraced and caressed the corpse before having a shock back into reality. After the incident, Gacy returned home and attended college in Northwestern Business College, which he eventually graduated from in 1963 and took a job in a management position at a company within his town. After being transferred to Springfield by his company to work as a salesman, Gacy met a Marilyn Myers, who he became engaged to and later officially married in September 1964. He had 2 children with her, but would later go on to remarry with a different woman named Carol Hoff. Additionally, it is also worth noting that along with his medical issues such as suffering heart conditions, severe seizures, and a burst appendix, later in his life, Gacy would be diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic, which may have been fuel to his serial killer nature. Regarding his criminal activities, however, Gacy began his spree of crime by attempting to have sexual contact with many teenage boys who worked for him. If they denied him, then he would claim that his advances were a joke or a test of morale. Eventually, he went far enough that he sexually assaulted a Donald Voorhees along with many other teenage boys, sometimes claiming his acts were a work of homosexual experimentation, in which he would then pay his participants a sum of $50. Gacy was eventually convicted for these acts and was sentenced to jail. He would soon qualify for parole and join the Jolly Jokers as a clown, creating his own personas and characters. His first murder, however, took place in 1972 when a teenage Timothy McCoy stayed at Gacy's house after a sexual encounter, and Gacy awoke to see the boy in his room with a knife. Gacy killed the man in what he thought was self-defense, but later found out that Timothy had the knife because he was preparing breakfast for the 2 of them. Gacy buried the body but realized that he had experienced the ultimate thrill by killing the boy and took a strong sexual pleasure from it. Gacy would then go on to kill at least 33 more victims, most if not all of them being teenage boys, with a majority of them having died due to strangulation or asphyxiation. He became known as the Killer Clown due to his charitable deeds and entertaining displays under his clown persona, while also performing his vile acts of rape, murder, and torture behind closed doors. Most of his crimes took place from the range of 1972 to 1978, and he often took the personal belongings off of his victims as trophies, and also had the intention to have sexual relations with his victims and or raping them before the murder took place. Due to a missing persons case that Gacy was involved in, the police became aware of suspicious behavior that Gacy exhibited, such as refusing to speak with them involving the case and having items that possibly belonged to the missing teenage boy. Because of these accusations, other victims came forward involving instances where Gacy would drug and rape them. All of this adding up was enough for Gacy to be charged and put on trial. During his trial, Gacy claimed that he suffered from multiple personality disorder and that was the reason for the crimes that he committed, but his lawyers attempted to persuade him that he was not guilty because of reasons of insanity. When this was disproved, his lawyers tried defending him by saying that the murders were accidental due to erotic asphyxiation. That was also disproved due to highly improbable circumstances, and after the 5th week on trial, Gacy asked for a mistrial to be made for his case, but was refused and eventually found guilty after the jury took 2 hours to make the verdict. Gacy's official sentence was the death penalty based on 12 counts of murder, and he served his penalty on May 9, 1994. His final meal was a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken, a dozen fried shrimp, french fries, fresh strawberries, and Diet Coke. His final words were, "Kiss my," well, you know. If we were to characterize Gacy as a serial killer, we would first start by stating that he was a stable one. He did not move from place to place to do his killings, and all of his victims appeared in the same area. He was also very much disorganized, but with some organized tendencies. He was messy, he left loose ends in evidence, but on the other hand, he was also smart enough to clog the cavities of his victims with clothing and apparel and such to prevent them from leaking fluids as evidence onto his house. He was also hedonistic, as every single one of his kills he took a great sense of sexual pleasure from, that he even claimed that he got no greater sexual thrill than when he killed.